Perfect. All right, awesome. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to keep playing music while people come on in. I know that we are halfway through the conference today. So I really just want to get an idea to see how you all are doing. I'd love to see in the chat if anyone could just tell me how they're doing. How's their day going? If you could just describe it in a couple words. Is it going great? Is it going good? Are you tired? It's Friday Eve. Have you been inspired? Just some words to kind of give me a little bit of feedback to see how we are doing as an audience. Any sort of feedback would be great. This is a whole session on performance feedback. I'm gonna have just a minute till I get a little bit of feedback. Tell me, how is your day going in the session? Going great, going great. All right, I'm getting just a little bit of feedback. Actually, I think I'm going to give days going well. I've been crazy. All right, I'm getting a little bit of feedback, getting a little bit of pulse on how you guys are doing. Actually, I'm going to give those responses, I'm going to give you a 4 out of 10. That's not the best. 4 out of 10, I think we can do a little bit better. We're going off a Likert scale on our performance feedback. So I'm going to ask the question again. I am a speaker. I'm trying to get a pulse on the audience, see how you guys are doing. If you guys could give me a little bit of feedback, how is your day going? Give me a little bit more feedback. I'm looking for something a little bit specific. You got a 4 out of 10. Enjoying the conference and the sunshine. Okay. All right. Feeling inspired from the talk. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. That's some good feedback. All right. So for those answers, I'm going to give you a little bit more feedback on what I'm looking for. See, first time we went off a Likert scale, 4 out of 10. Now, this is oftentimes what teams use. I'm giving you a 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, but we don't really have a lot of feedback after that. So the answers that I'm looking for, I want faster responses. I want faster responses whenever I ask the question, how are you doing? I'm looking for something a little bit more specific. Specific answers. I'm also looking for a certain quantity. This is a checkbox type of feedback that I'm giving you on your answers. So we have a little bit more feedback. Put this up here. Gonna ask the question again. I'm a speaker trying to get a sense on how you all are feeling today. I've gotten some responses, but I'm looking for faster, specific, and a different quantity of feedback. So if you can put in the chat how your day is going. Enjoying the presentations. All right. Feeling multitasking. Had a great lunch. All right. I'd love to hear what you had for lunch. Awesome. Getting a lot of helpful takeaways. Okay. All right. Great. All right. So that was good. I got a little bit greater quantity. I actually didn't get specifically what I'm looking for. Steak sandwich. That is amazing. This time I give you a 7 out of 10. So we're going to go back to a Likert scale. 7 out of 10 is passing. It is passing. But due to industry regulations, we're changing everything. The feedback that the descriptive words I'm looking for all begin with the letter A. So I only want you to use descriptive words that begin with the letter A. So awesome, amazing, audacious, whatever descriptive word you can think of that begins with the letter A. I'm also looking for 3 words. Doesn't have to be 3 specific words, but again, with our specific company, we want to provide a certain amount of feedback to our audience. So looking for not too much. We don't want to overload with a ton of feedback, but we don't want to give too little. We want three words. Describe your day in 3 words that begin with the letter A. And we talked a little bit about time and how quick we're going to respond. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I see Claire is already on it. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Hold on. Let me put this up. 3, 2, 1. 10 seconds. 3 A words. That's a lot. I see awesome, anxious, appreciative. Got 5 more seconds. It's hard to think of that 3rd A name. At a loss. A-okay. Someone said about to start. Aspirational. Oh, I have not heard aspirational yet. Appreciative. Amazing. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right. That was very good feedback. Very good. I feel like I have a good pulse on how you all are feeling today. I'm going to give you 10 out of 10. Good job, everyone. See, we are only 4 minutes into this chat, and we've already learned a lot about feedback, and we're able to see these different types of feedback that we actually use within organizations all the time. Sometimes whenever we're giving feedback, we can just give a basic 4 out of 10. That wasn't a lot of feedback that we could use to really see, to really improve. We could see where we were, but we didn't really know how to improve. The second type was more of a checkbox. So that's when the answers are kind of given to us. So is it fast enough? Sure, maybe we can go a little bit faster, a little bit quantity, but we didn't have, so we had some sort of direction, but it really was in that third form of feedback that we were able to get very specific, so we could get strategic to give the best feedback that we could. So good job, everyone. We've already improved our feedback even within the first few minutes. It's so great to meet everyone. My name is Amber Vanderburg, and I am the founder of the Pathwayz Group. And a few years ago, I actually traded my job in corporate HR as I went to become the only American, the only female, the only Christian, and the only blonde academy football coach or soccer coach for the Adidas Game Day Academies and Paris Saint-Germain, PSG Academies in Bangalore, India, to coach widely the first generation of athletes on both an elite and a grassroots level. I coached about a dozen teams, mostly boys with a few girls, ages 6 to about 16. And as I got off the plane, I discovered that our team was operating under a very strict command-obey dynamic. See, oftentimes our players would come to sessions and they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for instruction. And they would come to our sessions and they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for direction. And they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for feedback. And while this may have been an efficient way to teach a skill, in a game scenario, it was a disaster. Oftentimes our players within the course of the game would kick the ball perfectly, exactly the way that we taught them. And then, before the play was even over, they would turn to the sideline to the coach for further direction and feedback. See, they had mastered the task, but they didn't quite understand how it applied to the overall game scenario. So this is a story of how we transformed our performance by actually transforming our performance feedback. And it all began on the soccer field or on the football pitch. And so the first thing that we had to do was stop, truly stop. See, we stopped commanding the how, and we started clearly communicating the what and the why. So we stopped commanding the how, and we started clearly communicating our what and our why. In application, it looked a little something like this. Rather than stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for instruction, we provided challenges. So from here, kick the ball to knock down those 3 cones. Because in order to do that, you're going to have to kick with power and precision. And in a game scenario, whenever you pass, whenever you kick, whenever you shoot, you're also going to have to kick with power and precision. And from challenges like these, we found that we were able to clearly communicate our what and our why, and then provide opportunities for ownership within the how. Now, there were aspects of the game and aspects of football or soccer that we could not change, but we found that there were at least 4 major opportunities for ownership within our team. And that was within our processes, our methods, our projects, and our roles. I'll say that again. It was within our processes, our methods, our projects, and our roles. And so we communicated our what and our why, and then we provided those opportunities for ownership within the how. And see, in order to give great performance feedback, we must first create an environment for great performance. And so that's what we did, is we really created an environment where people could truly perform at a higher level. Now, one thing that we found is with these new challenges of stand here, kick the ball to knock down those 3 cones, I saw some of the most heated debates I'd ever seen amongst 7-year-olds, trying to decide if the best way to kick the ball was with the infoot or with the laces. In reality, both ways were right. And so we were able to increase our tools within our toolboxes to perform at a higher level. But there was something that happened. See, whenever there was only one way to kick the ball, there was a lot less tension. There was a lot less conflict. See, there was only one way to do things. But now, with an opportunity for ownership, there was a greater opportunity for conflict. There was also a greater opportunity for conversation over complacency. I'll say that again. With an opportunity for ownership also comes a greater opportunity for conflict, but also comes a greater opportunity for conversation over complacency. Now, we didn't want to create an environment where there would be more conversations over complacency, there would be more conflict, and not actually equip our teams to work in an environment and to thrive in an environment where there was a variety of different ideas, there was a variety of team dynamics, and we could have these conversations in a truly healthy manner. And so we actually had to help our teams to have proactive conversations. Now, the first thing that we did is we truly looked at our team dynamics. So whenever, and this is something that I do today, whenever I work with a new team, whenever I take on a new client, whenever I am coming into a new organization, especially as we are creating a more diverse workforce, we begin looking at the team dynamics. So you can do this in a variety of ways. Some people do look at different personality assessments. Some people do different assessments for trains of thought. A very simple thing that you can do is to actually pull out a note card. And so I pull out a 3x5 index card, and I have all of the team members on the front side of the card write areas in which they feel really strong. Areas in which they believe that they can add value to the organization and value to the team. And then on the opposite side of the card, either I or someone will write down areas in which they hope somebody else is really strong within the team. Something that you hope is somebody else's strength and that can add value to the team. I'll give you an example. Whenever I do this activity and write down on the front side of the card, I write that I'm a visionary, big picture type of person. But I really hope on the other side of the card that there is somebody on the team that is detail oriented and that is very good at the follow through. And I know from this that we will complement one another. But we more than likely are going to have some areas of tension and some areas of conflict, some areas where we will complement each other, but then also we will be having some conversations more than likely. And so from here, I'm able to have a really catered, proactive conversation. And a proactive conversation goes like this. Again, at the beginning of a project, the beginning of a new client relationship, coming into a new team, we'll begin a conversation and ask, at some point in this project, at some point in this relationship, there's probably going to be tension. There's going to be heat. There's going to be misunderstandings. There's going to be conflict. And so while our emotions are low now, let us proactively discuss how we are going to handle those conversations whenever they inevitably happen. And this does two major things. First, it normalizes conflict. It says not only do we say that there is going to be conflict, which many times people don't want to confront conflict because we don't want to admit that there is a problem. But here we're saying not only do we acknowledge that it happens, but we're actually saying that we expect it to happen within our teams. And again, if we're creating an environment for more conversations over complacency, these proactive conversations are really, really powerful. The second thing that it does is it creates a script. It creates a game plan that you can use moving forward. And so it takes away a bit of the ambiguity of, okay, I need to have this conversation. I don't really know how it's going to go. I don't know how they're going to respond. I don't really know what to say. It takes out that the anxiousness that oftentimes comes with that and the ambiguity, because you've already proactively discussed, this is how I agree that I am going to respond to this. This is how we're going to have this conversation. And it gives you a game plan to move forward. And so these proactive conversations are really, really powerful. And it helps us to overcome some of the greatest barriers to excellent performance feedback. One is the fundamental attribution error. Now, the fundamental attribution error is really a fancy way of saying that too often we judge other people by their behaviors while we judge ourselves by our actions. I'm sure you've never seen this while coding or while programming or whenever you're in a team. But this is what the fundamental attribution error is. We actually see this a lot in our everyday lives. Whenever we're driving down the road and we see somebody cut us off, and we say, oh my gosh, they're such a horrible driver. Let's take away their license. They don't know what they're doing. And we judge them by their behavior. But whenever we have to cut somebody off, we didn't see the exit sign coming up. We didn't intend to cut them off. We had a reason for what we were doing. And so we see this even within our everyday lives. I was working with a team a few months back, and there was a person that was coming into team meetings. There was a team member that would come into team meetings, and he was oftentimes seen as very abrupt, seen as very abrasive. Some even said malicious. And so we kept in mind the fundamental attribution error. And so rather than reprimanding that behavior, we began with the question, what is your intention whenever you are speaking in meetings? And the reality is that the man was intending to be passionate. He was intending to be persuasive. And so what we found is that there was actually a knowledge gap between the behavior and the intention. And so we were able to approach the conversation from more of a coaching standpoint. And we were able to partner with the person to actually improve performance. Imagine as a coach, if I reprimanded every single one of my players whenever they took a shot and missed. See, they were intending to score a goal and there was a miss. And so I saw their intention and was able to be a coach to help them match that intention with the behavior and with the action. And see, whenever we are having these conversations, it's important to keep in mind that there are actually three major purposes to performance feedback. The first is to, the first is to correct undesired performance. So our first measure is to correct undesired performance. The next is to encourage desired performance. I'm going to encourage desired performance. And then finally, the third purpose of performance feedback is to coach or to build upon performance. And this is a really powerful piece of knowledge to know whenever we're coming into a performance review or coming into some sort of performance feedback. What is my purpose? Am I trying to correct, encourage, or coach feedback within my team? And this brings me to a really important aspect of performance feedback. See, we must be specific so that we can be strategic. See, we must be specific to be strategic. As a coach, I oftentimes hear coaches come to players at the end of the game, encouraging, saying, if they won, they say, "Good game, good job, well done, keep up the good work," which sounds really nice, except the players don't exactly know what behavior should be repeated. What behavior is being encouraged? Should I run faster? Should I continue to run fast? Should I continue to guard the player better? What specific behavior is being encouraged? I see it on the other end. So we must be specific so we can actually be strategic in our performance improvement. On the other end, I remember one time I was coaching a team and I had a young lad that loved to come in during halftime whenever we were down. And he would say with complete confidence every single time, "Guys, I know exactly what we need to do to win. We just need to play better." And while this was correct, it wasn't specific enough for us to make the changes that we needed to be strategic to truly win the game. We needed to be more specific so that we could be strategic in our teams. So keep that in mind whenever you are giving performance feedback. Now, we've talked about building an environment for great performance. Skills and tools that you can use proactively whenever you're coming into a team and having those conversations for great performance. We also talked about giving feedback in a more informal manner. Are we coaching? Are we correcting? Are we encouraging? I had many people ask me, I come from an HR background, "Amber, that's all good and fine, but whenever I think of performance feedback, I think of the dreaded annual performance review." How often should we give formal feedback? How often should we give formal feedback? See, sometimes whenever I look at formal feedback, some companies look a little like this. Actually, it's a little like this. See, imagine that this is a ladder, and this is the person trying to climb. And so these identify the gaps between each year. And so we begin in January and we go February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. We get more feedback. Now you're expected to make the jump by the next performance review. There's too big of a gap in between here. We don't want to talk about something that happened in December in February. We actually want to have more consistent feedback so that we can take the steps that we needed to grow and continue to improve within our teams. And so an annual review, in my opinion, does not need to be completely nixed. I know that there is a petition almost to get rid of the annual review. I think the annual reviews can be very good if they are a summation of the reviews that we have been getting all along throughout the year. And so rather than having massive gaps in between our performance review, some teams are tempted to go the other way. And that is to go and give a lot of reviews. And so have reviews every other week and have 360 and have a lot of different reviews. And whenever I see this, I'm kind of reminded of going to the gym. See, if I went to the gym and weighed myself and I was trying to lose weight and I tried to weigh myself every single day, probably wouldn't see a lot of difference between day 1 and day 2. But I might see a big difference between week 1 and week 4. And so we actually need to have a span of time so that we can take in that feedback, make the adjustment that we need, and then actually have that feedback noticed and have that performance improvement seen. So it can be a bit of fatigue and actually a little bit disparaging to have formal feedback given, every week or something like that. That actually can be a little bit disparaging in some team dynamics. Most commonly within teams, I suggest something that looks a little like this. And so this is feedback that is given either on a bi-monthly or a quarterly, on a quarterly time. If you think about it, it takes about a week or two to actually digest the feedback that we have been given. It takes a little bit of time to digest feedback that we've been given, come up with a plan to improve, implement that plan, and then have that plan be seen or assessed by other people within the team. That's going to take, in total, usually, 6 to 8 weeks at minimum to see that change. And so I look at really more of a bi-monthly or a quarterly review. And then from there, you can have an annual review if you want to have an annual review. And then I suggest that that be more of a summation at the end of those bi-monthly or quarterly reviews that you've been given the whole time. So that is the Goldilocks. These are my Goldilocks and the three bears, is to have quarterly or bi-monthly feedback within your team. Whoops. Now, I didn't want to be the only voice on the field. In fact, there are times whenever I'm coaching that I don't want to be the loudest voice on the field. See, there are a variety of different people on the field that have different positions, they have different viewpoints, they have different relationships, they can see things that I can't see. And so whenever I was giving feedback, we actually did have formal feedback with our players through the academy. We actually did them bi-monthly. And one thing that we included was feedback ownership. See, I didn't want to be the only voice. Now, some teams do call this a 360 feedback. That is one way that you can give feedback ownership to your teams and to your organization. There are other ways as well that you can really encourage and equip your team to give great performance feedback. First thing that you can do is to educate and give them these tools that you can use as you're giving performance feedback within your teams and within your organizations. And so one thing that we certainly did was work with our teams to encourage them to speak up and to also provide feedback. There's a big difference between focusing on your scorecard and looking at the individual scorecard and the overall scoreboard. And as we all had a stake in our team success, and we all had a pivotal role in our team success and having a worthwhile and a desired scoreboard, we had to shift the focus from focusing on what am I getting on my scorecard to actually seeing how we could help give feedback to improve the team as a whole. And so one thing that we did was we encouraged feedback ownership within our teams to have a more holistic approach at our success and refocus from the individual scorecard to the overall scoreboard. Now, I've given you a lot of information. It's actually been a little bit since I've used the chat box in just a minute. And I actually want to leave you with one last story before I open it up to any sort of questions. And I actually have a few questions for you all. See, whenever I was coaching in football, or in soccer, I had a young lad named Achintya. Now, Achintya was 6 years old. And he was so excited for his first day of football. He came running out onto the field and he began yelling, "Pass, pass, pass!" And I noticed that Achintya was yelling pass even whenever the other team had the ball. And Achintya was yelling pass even whenever he was miles away from the action. And Achintya was yelling pass even whenever he had the ball. And so he was running with the ball, going, "Pass, pass, pass!" And so I looked at Achintya and I said, "Achintya, why are you yelling pass?" And he looked up at me and he said, "Miss Ember, I do not know what it means. I only know it is a football word. And sometimes I hear leaders sound a little bit like my friend Achintya, yelling, performance, feedback, performance reviews, proactive conversations, communicate the why, teamwork, leadership, collaboration, communication. We got this. Because we know that these are really good words that can lead to really big goals. But if we're in the wrong position, if we're miles away from the action, or even if we have the ball and we don't know in which direction we're going, then saying these words are not only ineffective, they're actually detrimental to our overall communication. Eventually, the team is going to tune you out. And the fact of the matter is that I can give as much feedback as I want, but my words do not speak nearly as loud as my actions. And if I say that I care about equipping my team to be successful, and then I do not act upon that statement, then the statement is not only ineffective, it's actually detrimental to the overall communication within the team. But if we first take the time to create an environment of great performance by clearly communicating our what and our why, and providing opportunities for ownership within the how, within our processes and our methods and our projects and our roles. And if we take the opportunity to have proactive conversations, looking at our team dynamics and laying an environment for great performance feedback, if we take the opportunity to truly understand the purpose behind our feedback and give quality feedback in a timely manner, communicating the right message in the right way to the right audience at the right time, then we will be in a position to yell pass, to receive the ball.
Sorry about that, folks. That was, I don't know what happened. So it looks like that was, totally on my end. But I'm glad to be back here. Glad everyone is back. So it looks like we do have, just a little bit of time. So one thing that I wanted to do is just open up to any sort of questions. One thing that I have seen quite a bit, especially within this COVID time, is it's just really important to be mindful of the way that we are giving our feedback. So there is a level of emotion that comes with our communication. And I kind of mentioned in passing, there's 4 major pillars to our communication. That is the right audience delivered in the right way to the right audience at the right time. And so one thing that I really focus on is delivering that message in the right way. So keeping in mind that there is an emotional scale to the type of performance or to the type of communication that we have. We should match our method of communication to that level of emotion. So if there is something that is a little bit more informational, such as a meeting, something that doesn't require a lot of back and forth, that is totally okay to send more through a text, a memo, an email. That is the form of communication that is really, this is a meeting that could have been an email. That is that type of communication. Here in the middle is where it gets a little bit murky, where there's not a guarantee that it's very personal. It could be somewhat emotional. And so generally what I do is I do recognize that there is a level and there is a span of time between each correspondence that is an opportunity for emotions to rise. So I actually call this the love letter effect. So this is really the opportunity where love letters were so effective for so long and are still effective today for a variety of different reasons. But one major reason is because there is a span of time for those words to sink in and for the emotion to build and for you to ponder the words between each correspondence. And the same thing happens whenever we are sending emails. There is a level of time and there is a span of time for emotions to build between each span of time within those correspondence. And so you actually have situations where you have communication that didn't begin as very personal, but it can get very personal or very emotional because of simply that span of time, because you have something that could have been solved in 10 minutes that actually has taken several days or several hours. And so that's more time that you are emotionally invested in that. And so generally what I do is I have teams come up with some sort of idea of, okay, what is how many emails is it going to take to solve this challenge before we're going to pick up the phone or alter our method of communication. For most teams, the answer is about 6 to 8. So if it takes more than 6 to 8 times going back and forth, then this probably isn't the best form of communication. Let's look at a quicker or a more effective form of communication. On the far end, especially if you are correcting performance, that is something that is more emotional. And so it is important to be as personal as possible. Ideally, this is face-to-face, actually in person, but of course, being mindful of the situation where we are at today, it is critical that you get as personal as you can. So whether that be a video conference, a phone call, or some of us can go in person, try and get as personal as you can to really show that empathy, get quicker feedback loops, and really allow a space for true conversation to happen. So really acknowledging the method of communication is really critical. Too oftentimes we spend a lot of times looking at the message, but not enough time looking at the actual method. So that's really important. Yeah, really important within our teams. Yeah, again, if anyone has any questions throughout here, I can definitely want to provide any insight that I can, any insight that I can. One question that I had for you as the audience is just kind of seeing, especially because it's since we are women in tech, is if you find that there is a difference in your communication preferences that you receive. One thing that I've found with working in all male teams, all female teams, and co-ed teams is that there is a difference, especially in the performance feedback, in first off, the order in which I give my what and why. Generally, if I am in a solely male team, I'll actually give what first and then why. With mostly female teams, I actually do that in reverse. It's just a difference of preference. And then whenever I look at praise and encouraging feedback, there are differences and there are preferences within teams in terms of do you want public praise? Do you want private praise? Do you want more detailed praise? How specific do you have a preference for praise? Some people, they're like, oh, thanks, I'll keep on doing that, well done. And so there are preferences that you can see within the team as well. And there are differences that I see. There are things that you can do as far as assessments. Generally, the quickest and the most effective thing that I do is simply ask. Most people know, hey, I prefer private praise over public praise. And so I'll do this in a simple spectrum. So right now it's really easy in a Zoom call. I'll have people say, okay, if you prefer public praise over private, lean to the left, lean to the right. And I can get a snapshot of team dynamics very quickly. Same thing I'll ask with communication styles. Do you prefer having in-person meeting, or do you prefer having video conferencing meetings? Do you prefer more email style for your communication? And this is really, really quick ways to see different ways that I can give that performance feedback. Personally, I'm a phone call type of person. Clearly, I like to talk a lot. Yeah, yeah, I like to talk a lot. And so for me, whenever I first started leading teams within training, I would call at the end of every training session and say, hey, what went well, what went better, what can we do better, and having those retrospectives. But I found that there were actually team members that really preferred to have that on text or on Slack for a couple different reasons. They like to think out their thoughts more clearly, and then they like to go back and look and have that on their phone so they could look back and see that progress. And so while I preferred calling for that feedback, there was actually a difference in communication preferences. And again, there are very large assessments you can do, and we do those within our company, but I think that there's very small things you can do to get very effective results, such as asking spectrum questions, such as lean to the left and the right within your team. I will even look at ideation methods. One thing that is overlooked oftentimes within teams that even myself as a leader that I have to be very intentional about is recognizing that there are people that have louder voices and softer voices. Also, there are people that are very quick thinkers, can come up with a lot of different ideas all at once. That is me. But they are not all very thought through. They're just ideas. Then there are other people that can come up with maybe fewer quantity of ideas, but they are more detailed and they are more in depth. And so these are things that I am cognizant of. One big adjustment that I've made within my meetings to be cognizant of this is before I go into an ideation meeting, I send out an email with the agenda to my team members. I'll answer that question in just a second. And I'll go in, so I'll send out an email and say, this is what we are having a meeting about. And so it gives people that want more time to think through those answers, a little bit more time to think through that. Whereas for me, I would just go to the meeting and kind of make things up on the fly. And so, come up with those ideas in the moment. And so it allows that span of time that some people whose brain works a little bit differently, they have that desired span of time. And then whenever I come into ideation, I actually have a few different methods that I can use. Right now, it's very exciting with remote because we can take ideas and write them on pieces of paper and then put them all in a Slack channel, or we can take them and post them on there's different websites you can use like Mural to put them all up on a virtual sticky board, and you can see all of the ideas. And this helps prevent some ideas that come from people whose voices are a little bit softer, that the ideas are not lost in that the ideas can speak as loudly as the people that have loud voices. So it really allows the ideas to really speak for themselves. So those are a few different tools that I use within teams. What was my most awkward performance review experience? Yeah, most awkward review experience. I think that one, okay, yes. So I had one that the person did not agree with their performance feedback, and it wasn't necessarily bad. It was, they did very good in some areas, and we identified areas for improvement. And it was very early on in my career. And one thing that I have learned to adjust since then is I did not ask the questions first to see how they perceived their performance was. And so that shock factor was, I assumed that we were on the same page with how we perceived that the performance was going, and we did not. And so from then, I've actually started asking questions first to see, okay, what are your goals? How do you think that you are doing? So again, I can come at it from more of a coaching perspective. It got a little bit awkward because the person did not agree, and I had to try and communicate my reasoning for the performance review while also trying to go into I come out from a point of empathy and relationships. So from there, I've actually began by first kind of identifying, okay, what are your goals? How do you perceive that you are doing in your performance? And then identify if there is an area of disconnect, because then I can be a little bit more strategic and tactical in my review and come at it from more of a coaching perspective. So that's a really good question. Yes. So I think that comes, so I found that actually very to an extreme level with kids, with boys versus girls. So if I simply said, okay, stand in a line and kick the ball, the boys would stand in line and kick the ball, and they would figure out the reason later. Like they want the action right then, generally. Whereas with an all-female team, that is not going to fly. It's a okay, but I want to know why. I want to know the purpose behind this while I'm doing it. And so it's a difference in mindset of, okay, I want to know the why first, and then I can do it with purpose. Whereas males, it's a little bit different of, okay, I want to do it, and then I'll figure out the reason why later on down. So it was more of, we had to add the retrospective at the end. Whereas it's kind of in reverse. There's actually a really good book from a soccer coach called Catch Them Being Good, and he was a boys coach going to a girls coach, and that was one of the biggest differences that he found. Was it wasn't that it was so much different, it was just a difference in the order that he was giving information. When a new member joins the team, how long should one wait to provide feedback to the new member? That is a great question. So first off, I would, have a conversation to see. Some people, especially, some people desire a lot of feedback at the beginning. So, after a couple of weeks, tell me how I'm doing. So I think informal feedback, there should be a lot of feedback informally at the beginning, to take away any sort of ambiguity, any sort of fear. The onboarding process within your company should be very extensive. It has a major effect on retention within your team and overall performance and engagement within the organization. So in that onboarding stage, there should be a lot of informal feedback and communication within the team member. As far as formal feedback, it does depend. I usually look at I usually look at the first month, just kind of check in, like, hey, how are you doing? How can we help you? And that's really more of a feedback on yourself. So how have we done in our first month? After about 3 months, so that's the quarterly review. After about 3 months, that's whenever I go in and say, okay, we've been here 3 months. We have some information. What are we doing well? What have we done well in the last 3 months? What can we do a little bit better? So awesome. Well, you guys asked some really great questions. My LinkedIn information is actually at the top of this chat. I would love for everyone to connect. If you have any other questions, I am here to help. Love to have any sort of conversation. So thank you so much for having me.